I think one of the things that has bedeviled Africa has been what I would call NGO-produced programming, the very worst of which always seems to me that you have a figure like Joe who discovers he has HIV/AIDS, he drinks too much, he starts taking drugs, and then he falls in love with a good woman and realizes that he should take his medication and attend the clinic regularly. Now, this is not a story, this is a slogan. And actually, one of the Hollywood moguls used to have a very good saying, which was during the 30s when he was constantly being approached by left-wing directors to produce movies with messages. He used to say, if you want to send a message, use Western Union.
Search for Common Ground is an international NGO. Our mandate is to mitigate violent conflict in fragile states or in countries that are going through extreme crisis. We use media, mainly radio and now television, as a tool to mitigate the conflict, and we have additional programming. My background is really from Hollywood, so I am all about entertainment and tucking in the messages that like this show called The Team. It's very much tucked in. It's not overt. This show called The Team has been running in Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. We're in 17 countries and growing. Each of the shows is sort of like the CSI franchise or Law and Order franchise, in which each of it takes place in a different city in the United States. This is true with this show. It takes place in different countries. Each of the countries, we work with local producers and writers to really root the show in the local context.
Yes, from Okuhle Media, we're based in Cape Town. We're a production company. We do a large range of genres of programming. The main reason we're here today is to speak about what you'll see on the screen right now, which is our flagship youth show called Hectic 99, which broadcasts daily on the national broadcaster, SABC2. It's a 1-hour show, of which we're very proud of, from a studio in Cape Town. It's commissioned by the SABC, so we have very strong mandates in terms of education and entertainment and the balance between that. And I think through that and our presenters presenting from studio, we've come to understand edutainment quite well. In terms of
Rolie Nkiwie, I'm a film director. Consider myself a creative. I've got like a 12-year experience in the industry, making television and film. Inside Story specifically, which was shot in 2010, had been a 3-year project in development before we actually got, 6-year project before we actually got to shoot it. And it was born out of a simple thing where Discovery Channel, after so much HIV/AIDS messaging that was happening in Africa, then they came to do research to say, given everything that you know to an average person, given everything that you know, use a condom, this, that, and the other, what is it that you feel you still do not understand about the epidemic? And the overwhelming response was that they don't understand the science, they don't understand this thing and how it works. And then we began a process of putting together the film Inside Story, which kind of is a parallel story of like one which is just a narrative, and then the other, like the narrative of HIV/AIDS from the point of infection to our character eventually learning and then deciding to do something about it.
Within the format of Hectic 99, I mean, it's a magazine-style show. We have a content team or a production team of about 13 to 15 people, depending, who get together with a pool of presenters and on a monthly basis talk about what is currently happening in the country and what are interesting topics and align them to the mandates that we have for Hectic 99. And then through those, plug them into the show in a very fun and inspiring way. And what we've done is we've positioned our 7 presenters essentially to represent the audience, which is targeted at a 9 to a 16-year-old, with a spill to about a 21-year-old, that the presenters essentially are the audience. So when they talk about stuff, they're not force-feeding information. They are speaking as if they are the audience, and it becomes a tangible topic for them to understand. And homosexuality in the black community has become huge for us, and it has become such a strong talking point. And social media, which our show is very largely driven by, has created this place where we can just talk about so many things in a safe space. And we bring that then into our talk show space, and we can just pull it apart with an audience and 2 or 3 presenters and some external representatives, and really have an in-depth, strong discussion, educating the audience about topics that, it's a bit touch and go sometimes, Yeah, and a very scary place for a lot of the youth at this stage.
The first 10 shows we did for the team were all funded by UK aid, and basically it was about governance. So what is governance? We took it from the point of view that if we have footballers from different ethnic groups, tribes, socioeconomic backgrounds, and in order to score goals, they have to learn to cooperate. That's a working metaphor. That's it. And from there, all I do is I go into each country. Kenya's a good example. My partners from Dreamcatcher are here somewhere. We hire local production companies, we hire writers. I actually treated this as I would do in the West, and we break down the characters, we start looking what the storylines are, we create the entire series we usually do 1 to 2, like 26 episodes at a time, and it's just like that. It's really...
Look, I've done a lot of HIV/AIDS projects, right? So let me just probably summarize like the process of each. Like about probably 8 years ago, we did a series called Cha-Cha, which was set up in a small town, and we're following 4 characters, and the main messaging around it is, first of all, like condom use, and then like abstinence and testing. For like one thing that me and the team have always believed in is that every story there's a moral of a story in every story that you can tell, right? So actually this whole thing of like trying to like taking this message and then putting it here and seeing it as a story is probably sometimes the flaw, we believe. So normally the approach is, okay, fine, so go to the small town, because this problem does exist in the small town, but you don't have people walking around feeling like the world is on their shoulders. So how do they deal with it? How does it manifest in the society? What are the dynamics? What is the stigma, and how does it manifest itself and stuff? And so once you've studied and have been able to pull out all these little things that already exist in the society, now you have grounds to start building a story. What could the story possibly be? What are the archetypes of these characters, right? And then build from there. And naturally, I've always felt that then the messaging kind of like finds spaces to cling in. And so when you're watching something, you're not watching a message, you're watching a piece of story, which is quite engaging and entertaining. Maybe the disease itself is not the problem. Maybe our flaws are. Maybe the lies are. Like maybe the whole multiple concurrent partner thing. Like maybe, you know what I mean? Like when you start to investigate self, rather than the disease itself, because then you have an understanding that, okay, so without the cracks, the disease has no chance. So actually, like, how do we then start to mend the cracks? Fine, so you're gonna tell the story of how HIV/AIDS works, the science of it. Now, between you and me, that's not incredibly exciting, right? So when we started to put it together and we started to tell the narrative and stuff, so the actual narrative, which is of a young man in Kenya who's very talented in football, gets scouted to come play in South Africa, and then everything goes wrong, was incredibly engaging. But every single time you sort of get into his body and you start to see the virus sort of float around and growing and whatever, it felt like a commercial ad break. Right? It's like, okay, cool, so that this is the time to go get something in the kitchen and we can come back and stuff. And then so the challenge for that one was that specific, and it's about, okay, fine. So how do we make sure that this is not information, but a story? So then we needed to put our heads together and come up with very solid story for each and every progression in terms of the animation of this disease and what it does at that specific point. The character's doing very well, and then you cut to the virus growing faster and faster. Suddenly, it's not an intellectual understanding that's happening, but it's emotional, because you understand that something is about to drop. And those are the things that we needed to work very hard to achieve.
We make deals with all of the government broadcasters first. Of course, they won't broadcast the show until they've seen it. We've been very lucky because our shows have been good, so they always broadcast. Like I say, now I'm looking more at places like Africa Magic and something that's much more commercial, because the long-term sustainability is to do quality programming is very difficult.
The SABC put a brief out for a youth show, and we went to them to pitch for a youth show. And the angle that we went in was for us to create the most interactive youth show in South Africa. And I think that was what the draw card was for it. And we got that pitch, and it turned out to be quite a challenging task, actually, because making that youth show the most interactive youth show, we had to initially educate the audience on how to be interactive. We actually pulled content topics from that to go into follow-up shows. Izikutane was something that happened where youth were buying extremely expensive clothes, and they were getting into groups on the streets, and they were trashing those clothes against each other to prove that they have money. It was something that happened that was we couldn't believe was happening, and we brought that into a talk show space, and it exploded. And it exploded in the sense where some people defended it and believed that that's what they were meant to do, and some people saying, how can you do that? How can you do that to just clothing, and when you don't really have money to be spending on really, really expensive clothes and then just trashing it in front of other people. So that conversation exploded online. I still produced one of the shows, and we went to a commercial break, and I said, we can't end this topic here. I said, skip the next segment, we're going back into the talk show, and that just continued for another almost 5 minutes. And 5 minutes of talk show on a youth show is quite extensive.
That's a long period of time.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Given attention span.
Absolutely, yeah.
I want to talk now about money, because what Hans Christian is right is in a way that the process is driven by money. If somebody comes along and says, here's £50,000 and this is the topic, then everybody will move in their direction and decide to make those kinds of topics.
Donors will come to us and say, especially with this show, the team, they'll say, wow, that was really successful. We think that that's a good vehicle for the country that we're working in, and can you do it? So we'll do an assessment. A lot of times we'll go to countries and say, and it's an unsolicited proposal, and say, look, we think this country could really use this. What do you think?
I was telling a friend a few days ago that I've been doing television and film for 12 years now. I haven't shot one idea that I came up with. I always have to respond to some kind of a brief.
So the idea found its home in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the strength of the series, because it wasn't manufactured to mold whatever the brief was. It already existed organically. And I think that's the strength of it.